everyone, welcome to Eris, its first podcast. In today's episode, we'll talk about what Taoism means to us and the ideas we have about it.
So with this article here that you wrote, it's mostly about like Lao Tzu, if he was real or not, and Tao itself is the path or the way, and all these general ideas, but and the Tao Te Ching itself, like the text, and those are like the basics of Taoism. But I think like what's interesting about Taoism is that it is a philosophy that is very, very different from anything that you can find in the West, I feel.
Because I think the philosophy of the East is quite different from
Yeah.
the West, like the way they think.
It's how to say, I feel like in the West usually there's like no idea, or rather it's hard to find ideas of where the individual lets go, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like
so
for
you always strive for things.
Yeah, it's always like you want to be involved in the world in some way, either rationally or you find some peace, but you're still involved in it. So I feel like that's a big difference, I think, with this philosophy, is that it is always about this idea that you need to
Let go.
Yeah,
To let go.
there's a sense of letting go. Yeah.
And then let the nature take its course.
In a way. And then again, if you say it like that, Taoists will jump up and say you're interpreting it wrong. And I don't know. It's still something that is hard for me to conceive, because I feel like with Taoism, like here you say, like therefore Taoism teaches to just allow everything to be, to trust in the comings and goings of all things. This also means to allow any emotion and feelings as they come. Let them go when it is time. Even try to fight a feel. Ever try to fight a feeling? Doesn't it just get stronger the more you fight it? That's actually very true, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're depressed, you're actually, in a way, it only gets worse, you know?
Yeah, the more that you try to work on it, the more severe it gets, and you just kind of like most of the time you just have to kind of accept that.
Yeah.
Accept that you feel depressed, and then it's going to pass. But when you try to fight it,
Yeah.
it just gets worse. Like most of the time, unless maybe you have a way to deal with that.
Mhm. It seems like you're fighting fire with fire, because feelings seem like fire.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, or thoughts. So thoughts and feelings might be the same thing in a way. Like maybe thoughts are just feelings that verbalize themselves in a way. That's what I'm thinking now.
So you think thoughts come first and then it
No, maybe feelings come first and thoughts are like the expression
okay.
of those feelings.
Okay.
So there's this idea, I was yesterday listening to some guy discussing Nietzsche.
Uh-huh.
And Nietzsche has this idea that that when you read a philosopher,
Uh-huh.
you're not actually reading something he discovered. What you're actually reading, well, you're also reading something that he might have discovered, but what you also read is someone who is writing his biography, true ideas. So actually what you're seeing, for example, say a philosopher believes that civilizations come and go, there is no progress in history, everything collapses. Well, that says a lot about himself, Nietzsche says.
Yeah, okay.
It says that this person probably went through life facing a lot of things ending abruptly. And so maybe what you're actually thinking is philosophy is basically a guy writing his autobiography, but he doesn't use it in the first person. He doesn't use it even in the third person. He avoids talking about himself, but he still addresses all the issues that are within him, and he uses a philosophy to get it out.
Okay.
That's why every philosopher has a different philosophy, Nietzsche claims, because it is the individual person's own perspective, which is molded by his experiences. And that's when you get all these myriads of philosophers talking about all these different angles, because their angles are created by their life.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, so I don't know why I got to here. Like, I'm gonna think again, but I think I got to here. Yeah, because like you wrote, like for example, like for that, if you find a feeling, like what is a feeling? What is a thought? So that's why I wanted to get back to that. Like, so if philosophies are the expression of psychology, and if words are an expression of feelings, then it's like fighting an apple tree with apples, almost, you could say. It's kind of what you could think, right? Like, it's like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to extinguish, say for example, you really hate, I don't know, like any fruit. Like, say for example, you don't want pineapples anymore. Or no, pineapples is maybe a bad example. Let's pick apples, for example.
Okay.
So you don't like there being a tree, so what you do is like you constantly like keep on harvesting apples or something like that. It doesn't make much sense, because those apples have seeds which creates new trees, right? So maybe fighting feelings with thoughts is not the way to go, because thoughts are just an expression of those feelings. They're like
what you mean.
Inherently linked to the feeling. So it's as if you cannot like kill the emotion if you are
fighting it with emotion.
Well, basically, language is an emotion, you could say, in a way. It's an expression of an emotion. So
what do you think is the right way to fight, like like the negative like emotion that you want to get rid of?
Gosh, thing is, like, I don't know myself. I know what Taoism says, or at least I hope to understand what it says.
What is the Taoism like way to deal with it? I guess like the Taoism way to deal with it is just to let it come and let it go.
Yes.
I think it's one way to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one way to deal with it. And then if we really look deeper into like emotion and then feelings, you can't really find like the root. Can we?
Well, that's kind of like a weird paradox in Taoism that I find, is that in Taoism they kind of say that everything comes from the Tao. Like, there's nothing in existence that doesn't emerge from the Tao. So by that logic, depression
comes from the Tao.
Must also come from the Tao.
Okay.
So being stuck, feeling emotionally stuck, it's not like that didn't come from the Tao. It also must have come from the Tao. So in a way, you're always in tune with the Tao. Even when you're depressed, it's like something you go through. But then they talk about like, but you need to align yourself with the Tao. And then I'm like, but isn't all that exists already within the Tao? So how can your depressive emotions, your desires, your hatred, your sadness also not be an expression? Like, for example, like the rain, right? Like the rain is just as much water as the rivers are, but it's just a different form of how we experience the flow of water, So in a way, I feel like maybe depression is also, in a way, a form of flowing. But it's not a flow we kind of recognize as a good flow. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like if you can look at it that way, if we look at it like everything comes from the Tao, then if we feel depressed, then we will be fine with that because we know it's from the Tao.
That's kind of the paradox, right? Like you need to remember where it comes from.
Yeah, and then if we always remember it's from the Tao, then I think we can deal with that better because it's just part of like the nature. It's like a natural process of life,
So it's kind of like reminding yourself in a way. Like when you feel sad, it's like realizing, like for example, now it's raining. It's like realizing, oh, this is just rain. That happens, and sunshine comes after that. Maybe it will hail sometimes. Like it might be snowy even, misty. But all these things disappear. Like as soon as you have a bit of experience with the world, you realize that all these things go away anyway.
Yeah, it's just like a natural process.
And you're not frustrated about the rain.
Yeah. You and then you choose to be, like to be frustrated.
Yeah.
With the rain and then with the depression or negative feelings. So I guess like if we can look at it like that way, then everything is like fine.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to take that example of the rain further. Like you have people who get really upset when it's raining. They say like, fuck the rain, I hate the rain. I don't want to like go through the rain, like go to work and like be all wet.
I want like all sunny days.
Yeah, and so basically, but then it's like an external condition which is possessing their mind. So just like when depression catches your mind, you identify with the depression. And at that point, the guy who hates the rain, he's basically identifying with the whole situation.
Yeah, with the rain.
Yeah. So his whole being becomes possessed by that situation. Just like you can become possessed by anything. But the Tao is kind of like real. I think it's like a fancy way of saying real, or like not really a fancy, because it's not that intellectual, I feel. It's like, it's when you say Tao, you say the way, and then you kind of realize that the way just means the way nature goes. And the way nature goes is that it has like all these alternations.
Yeah.
It has like a winter.
Like change, like it has everything.
Yeah.
Like it changes. Flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's nothing we cannot find in nature.
Yeah. Like for example, like you say here, and water isn't particularly lazy. However, rather than flowing against the tide, one flows effortlessly with the tide. Flowing water will overcome anything that stands in its way by being itself, flexible and soft. Water that stays stagnant initially looks like a still pool of water, but gradually becomes a festering swamp, breeding diseases, and will have a bad effect on the area surrounding it. So, but then again, festering swamps and diseases are also part of nature. So in a way, if everything became flowing water, you wouldn't have swamps, right?
Yes.
So you kind of need them. You kind of need those swamps. You kind of need those moments of depression where you're lost. I think in order for you to realize after it that this is also part of life.
Yeah.
But that's kind of hard to realize at the moment itself. But I think there's a time to realize that. But it takes time for you to realize.
Yeah, I guess like I guess we should be careful not to be trapped. Like I mean, like it's good to understand like that depression is part of life, but we still have to make an an effort to get out of that.
Yeah.
But maybe that's then contradict.
Yes.
I don't know. It's confusing.
The thing is with
but I think like if we really accept that, then it goes away, no?
Well, it seems like if you realize like everything goes away, it like runs off you.
Yeah, like if
it's
if
like
you,
okay, I gotta realize that. Like it's not gonna stay.
Yeah, it's not going to stay, and then they're not going to. Then it is not going to stay.
Yeah.
And then everything becomes like become fine again.
Yeah.
Like if you accept like the depression.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe that is the way to deal with depression.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different. I think now with it's because you have like this new age thinker. He's called Eckhart Tolle. He's called.
Yeah.
His book, The Power of Now.
Yes.
And he has this idea that if you are in the now, then you can reach a sense of peace. He says. So it's the idea that because his idea is that we actually mess up in life because our thoughts are either in the past, we're thinking about the past, about things that happened before, we didn't have control over, and we're constantly controlled by our past, like we're self-pitying, could be anything. Yes. Or we're constantly in the future. We are fighting for a better life next year my career will be successful in 2020. I'll make lots of money. Like all these things are possessing us, the past and the future, and we're constantly like ripped apart between these two because we're not in the now.
Yes,
so we're
yes.
constantly pulling ourselves apart with something that's not there yet, instead of the situation we're in now. And Eckhart Tolle says, but if you go really to the now, like the very, very moment right now, and you just experience it as it is now, this very fraction of a second, and you only pay attention to this like minuscule moment of time that passes with each second, then you can reach a sense of peace for a brief moment. And you always need to return to that now moment, not in the future, not in the past, but always like this very, very short blink of in the eye of time.
Yes.
And that's where you find peace, he says. But in Taoism, it's more like you don't pay attention at all, because like you still need to okay, I think that's kind of like a way of meditation. Then you can use that power of now stuff from Eckhart Tolle. You can kind of use it in that sense. But with Taoism, it's a little bit different than Eckhart Tolle's like handling of that thing. Because in Taoism, it's not like focus on the now. It's more like
going with the flow.
Yeah, it's like realizing where the flow goes in a way, and the flow goes to ever change, like that it will constantly change, basically. So in a way, the peace comes from realizing that the future is also not going to be determined, and the past is already gone, and the now is ever flowing. So basically there is no now, it's a constant flow in a way.
Yeah, but even if you use like the power of now, it's like constantly flowing too.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like as we are like talking now, like everything is changes like around us.
Yeah, that's true. You can even hear it outside, like with the rain
like,
and
like everything, like even like every sentence that we say is like it's like constantly like changing.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe there is like a way to combine them two.
there's actually like a real beauty in it if you realize that everything around you is changing. Even this house, in a way.
Yeah,
like the walls are changing. There's like stuff crumbling,
but
probably.
Slowly,
Yeah.
And then maybe like all the insects,
Yeah.
like crawling that we can't see.
Like for example, like water. Like when you think about it, water, if it flows, we don't realize that. Like for example, I walk. It's kind of like interesting because I always walk downstairs past this shop, and I think their drain pipe is really wrecked because I constantly see the water pour in like a big stream down on the street. And I was thinking, like, if this, say for example, this building stands for another, say, 80 years or another 100 years, right? And the water, each time it rains, keeps on flowing like that. After like 80 years, you will start to see that the stone is turning differently than the stones around it. Like it will start to get holes in it. So it's because like water, which is like so innocent, which if you throw a bucket of water over someone, it doesn't really do much. But it seems like if you throw buckets of water over 80 constantly, like with every time it rains, you start to change the whole stone even. With enough time, the stone becomes different looking. That's why the stones in rivers, like when you go to some river valley, the stones are shaped by the flowing of the river.
Yes.
You even see that with like like that's what erosion basically is, right? So erosion is just give water enough time and it will change everything.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I realize now with the rain outside, is like indeed like everything is constantly changing around you. It's like nature doesn't really stop.
No,
and that's maybe what the Tao
stop.
means. It doesn't stop.
Like even like with the wind, we cannot see it, but it's flowing and it's
all the time.
It keeps flowing, and we just don't see it because it takes time to change something. Like like with water, like and the stone, like it takes like years for it to change.
Yeah, but that's where then that's a realization that everywhere people have had. It's not like we're stupid for saying this, and we're like not very special for having realized the world is constantly in motion, but it's more like
I guess everybody
in the history
realized that. I think everybody realizes
at one point,
that, yeah.
But what I find important to stress about that is that, okay, so you realize there's a whole phenomenal world around you where everything is changing, and there's like no constant. In ancient Greece, they try to actually always find the one thing that is constant. So they were always convinced that, well, not all of them, but let's say that they were always trying to find the element in nature that was unchanging. So you had the phenomenal, which is like the world we're talking about, like everything in nature constantly moving. There's basically nothing in reality as we know it, or as we experience it, that is not undergoing some sort of change.
Yes.
Everything, even we, the house, the sun, everything is basically constantly in motion. There's like no stopping. Nothing is really still and unmoved. And that's why they always, at least some thinkers, always try to look for, but there has to be something that is not moving, that is unmoved. And for example, Aristotle, he talked about the unmoved mover. And that is the thing that is unaffected by everything, that is always still. It doesn't move, it is perfect, because perfection kind of from that angle means it is not changing. So perfection means it doesn't undergo any change. It is always as it is, and that is different from the world of becoming. The world of becoming is always shifting and turning and becoming something else. It dies, it's reborn, and there is something beyond all that which doesn't move, and that's the noumenal world. The noumenal world is like the world of what Aristotle calls the unmoved mover, which could be called God in a way. So that's kind of like the God who isn't affected by anything, is perfect, and moves the whole universe around him. But he himself is not affected by it. And then you have the world of ideas of Plato, where all the things that exist find their blueprint in perfect stasis, so it doesn't move, in some sort of heaven world, where, for example, the perfect tree exists. Like we have trees, and they're born and they die, but in that world you have the perfect tree, or the perfect cloud even, which is kind of absurd to think of, but in that world all the perfect things exist, and they don't move, they don't change, they're perfect, they just exist like a perfect blueprint almost. And this world is kind of like where all these things go to, die and reborn, but then they return to the ideal world where they are perfect. So it's kind of the idea that beyond all of this, there must be some sort of heavenly world where things are not moving and things are perfect.
Okay.
That's kind of what in a lot of philosophies you find. Especially in the West, in the Middle East, you find a lot of these ideas that, okay, beyond all of that, you have to have a world where things are not affected by anything. That they're just perfect in stasis and they're as it is. So like, for example, there's like one thinker who tried to logically prove that there is no becoming and there's only being. So what he meant by that is that it's kind of like, I don't know how to paraphrase it exactly, but Parmenides, his name was, and he tried to logically prove that there cannot be a world of becoming. There's only a world of pure being. Because if something becomes, I think I can kind of maybe paraphrase it like that, but he says if something becomes, then that means there is an element of nothing there. Because if something is becoming, that means like it is not something yet. But that cannot be true, he says. Because nothing can be nothing. Or something like that. So it's kind of like a weird logical step he takes, but it actually makes sense if you kind of read it, where he says that the world can never really become, because if it becomes, then it implies that it is something that it is not yet, but that cannot be, because it has to be something already. So what we are seeing is an illusion, he says, and everything already is. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
we're actually we're actually like seeing an illusion, he claims, or rather that's kind of my reading of it, where the whole world we're seeing constantly move and everything is changing, but for Parmenides actually what we're seeing is just an illusion, and everything is. And me, you, the house, the rain, it's all an illusion. There is only pure being. And that's kind of what he arrives at then. There's only a pure being. And it doesn't have any qualities. So it doesn't have colors, it doesn't have like a skin, it doesn't have like, it's not the stars, it's not space, it's pure being.
So if everything is pure being, then why everything is also an illusion? Is that like...
Yeah. So you're wondering why do we
Yeah.
see anything changing at all? And he says it's because we are not seeing things from the right angle. That's kind of what he believes.
And does he explain like how to see things from the right
I
angle?
don't know how he... I don't know if he does. If he explains how we can see through the illusion, right? Like an illusion is basically like, oh, I thought that camel, like when you see those pictures, right? I thought the camel had 5 legs, but it turns out it's 4. But the picture is drawn in a way to make me see things that are not there. So when you see the world constantly moving around you, Parmenides would claim, yeah, but you're actually like seeing an illusion now. There's like not actually nothing. There's nothing really changing. Everything is.
Okay, it's a bit hard to
Yeah,
grasp.
that's indeed a bit hard to grasp. But maybe I kind of sometimes feel this is also kind of what maybe Taoism is claiming too, by implying it's a way. In a way, okay, that's kind of a funny segue to say in a way, to talk about the way. But what I think, if I have to interpret, like use Parmenides' ideas and try to marry them to
Taoism?
yeah, then okay, if everything is pure being and Taoism says something like, okay, everything is constantly changing, like how can you marry those ideas, right? Like they kind of contradict each other, but maybe they don't have to contradict each other. Maybe Taoism can allow for a phenomenal world where we see things changing.
Yes.
But maybe it can also allow for a noumenal world where things are perfect as they are and nothing is really changing. Maybe Taoism is just saying there's a way, but just like a way, the road is already drawn, right? So maybe everything happening on the road is already there and it's not really changing. We're just seeing it change, but it's not really changing.
But how is it not really changing? I mean, like everything is changing. Like even like as now.
Yeah, but maybe it's an illusion. Maybe time is an illusion, and it's already everything is there already. It's like a solid thing, maybe.
Everything is there already, as in everything is supposed to be where they are.
Not necessarily that. It's the idea that. Like we have to look at time not as a thing that is going from point A to B, but the whole thing is already there. The whole journey from A to B is already there. It's like an object almost. So instead of seeing yourself moving from point A to B, what you need to see is like a snake of hues going all the way to B. And that's basically time. Time is just an object you don't understand yet. And the events happening in time it's actually one thing that is already existing. And we just don't have the right angle to look at it yet. So we're seeing just we're seeing events unfold, but actually what we're kind of seeing is a thing. And it's not really happening, we're just seeing a thing. It's like looking at something from different angles and it has different colors, right? And we're like, oh wow, the colors are changing, but actually the colors are not changing. It's just one thing and we're looking at it from different angles. So the experience of time is just seeing a thing in its many forms.
Okay.
It's like, for example, like touching, like you know the story of the blind man touching the elephant?
No.
It's like, for example, I don't know who or where that story comes from now. I should maybe look it up later, but it's interesting. It's like there's a bunch of blind men, and they're asked to touch an elephant and to describe.
Oh yeah, probably I heard of that.
Yeah,
One.
they're asked to describe. Yeah, and the one says, "Oh, it's like a brick wall," and then the other says, "Oh, it's more like a snake." And and they have all different interpretations of the same thing, basically.
Yeah, because they're touching different parts of the elephant.
Yeah. So maybe time is like that. Maybe time is just me seeing parts of one thing. But all of existence might already be one solid thing. And I'm just seeing parts, touching parts of it. And I'm saying like, oh yeah, now it is moving in that direction. But actually, it's not really moving. It's already solid. Everything is there already.
Okay.
It's kind of absurd to think about. But it's almost like to see yourself from young to old as one giant snake that goes through time, and you're seeing every second of your body moving, but it's actually one solid thing.
Okay.
It's like when, for example, like maybe the best thing you can do is like when I take a picture of you moving, and it looks like your whole body is like blurry, right?
Yes.
Well, maybe that's that whole blur. So maybe all of existence is like one giant blur, and we just see it moving, but it's actually not really moving. It's just one giant blur that is having all these different forms.
Yeah,
kind of.
all different movements.
And maybe that's the way. Maybe the way is just one solid thing. That existence is just one solid thing, and we think we're walking away, but actually the way is already drawn. It's already there. It's already taking its course, and maybe that explains why in Taoism they also have. Because Taoism is kind of like morphed into a religion in Taiwan and in China and all other parts where Chinese people live, like even in Singapore you have Taoism. So it's almost like you have, what I notice is with Taoism is that they have like even future prediction too. So they have like the I Ching, for example.
Okay.
Like with the coins, like you throw the coins and you get like a hexagram. And the hexagram then tells you, okay, this is the future for the question you just asked, right?
So are you saying like everything is predetermined?
Well, in that if it's already one solid thing, then perhaps yes. Then determinism makes total sense in that. So if everything is one thing, then asking the Tao, like, hey Tao, I have a question, like what about my relationship?
Yes.
And the Tao gives you an answer. Well, it can give you an answer because it's already there. The end of your relationship or something like that. It's already on the path.
Yeah, okay.
You think you're going to head towards that part of the path to find out that your relationship is going to go well or it's going to end.
Yeah,
but
yes.
It's already there. And the Tao is saying like, oh yeah, that's going to happen. Like on the path you will see this. So basically future prediction then makes sense for Taoism. Because everything is already there.
Okay, so what about like what decides our actions then
it seems like nothing, right? Like it's
automatic. Like
it seems like it, right?
We are decided to do like actions. Like every action that we do is like it's not our decision. Is that the idea?
If I go with the interpretation I have of it at this very moment of Taoism, I would say probably yes. And that's kind of what probably is meant by going with the flow. It kind of means like everything is already set for you, and it's now for you a matter of accepting it. And if you accept it, everything goes much better. But then again, it's kind of like the paradox again. You resisting was also part of the plan, and you accepting is also part of the plan.
Okay.
So it seems like everything that happens, even this whole conversation,
it's all part of the plan.
Yeah, it's all part of like how things were supposed to move. So it seems like you cannot escape it.
Yes,
in a way.
Like if you really look at life, then I guess like you can find like some truth in that.
In a way, yeah. I find it still as mysterious, of course, and I don't think it's meant to. I don't think life is like meant to really understand. Like the more I think about it now, from the Taoist angle, then, because like many other philosophies, they do believe that you can understand reality, and you can, like some philosophies might claim you can understand 95% of reality. The 5% we're not sure about, but those 95 we can figure out.
Okay.
But I don't know what Taoism says. I think Taoism kind of says like not even 1% you can figure out. That's sometimes the feeling I get. Like they don't even admit that you can figure it out. The whole philosophy seems to me set up in order to make you let go of that. So that's kind of why I think it morphed into a religion almost, where it allows you future prediction so that you can become at peace with your fate. It allows for gods for you to talk to and ask things from. It allows for a whole bunch of things in order to just live your life. Because I don't think Taoism, its main ambition seems to be to understand reality. That's kind of a very different approach than the West. I think Taoism's main ambition almost seems to be like, this is what we can figure out about it, and it's not even a percentage. Here are some techniques to let go of trying to understand it. Like when you get that stupid feeling, like I want to understand what this is all about, then here are some beautiful poems and like to make you forget about that. Like it's more like therapy in a way. Therapy for a mind that tries to handle a thing it cannot really handle in a way.
So I guess if we really adapt that kind of like thinking, like you can say like you can like we have like purpose, and but also we don't have purpose in
a way. Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, because like we have purpose because everything is like predetermined for us, and we have no purpose because we like everything is predetermined for us.
Yeah, but you never live predetermined. Like as soon as when you live your normal life, you're still, and even if you don't intervene as much in reality, you're not living like, oh, everything I do now is like clicked by something. Like there's like a guy pulling strings behind me and I'm just like, whatever, playing a role. You don't even live like that. Nobody lives like that.
No.
So predetermined is like a conclusion that I think Taoism kind of wants to teach in a way, to use predetermination. At least that's kind of what I get out of it now, because I feel like every time I talk about Taoism I get different things out of it. But maybe that's
the way it's supposed to be.
I guess probably, yeah. Yeah, it leaves it open always. It leaves the space open for new ideas.
Yeah, new ideas, interpretation.
Yeah, and I think what I get out of it now is that Taoism kind of leaves this idea of, like if predetermination can be a way of, instead of seeing yourself imprisoned, like, oh, everything is predetermined, that means I cannot change my fate, I'm locked. It's like being in a roller coaster and you want to get off.
Yeah.
And you're scared, but you cannot get out of the cart because that would kill you, right?
Yes.
So what Taoism is actually teaching you is like, okay, now you're in the cart and you cannot get out. Like maybe this is how you can enjoy the ride, because the ride is really not that dangerous. It tells you basically a way to enjoy the ride. Up until the point you actually start enjoying it. And when the ride's over, you kind of can let go in a way. I think that's kind of what it tells in some way. Like, okay, everything is predetermined, it goes along this way, this path. And, well, how about I tell you now how to enjoy it, because that's kind of like how it goes.
Okay, so probably it's like the destination is as has been chosen, but like the journey is like what we decide.
It's a choice almost.
Yeah, it's a choice.
You want to make this a journey, or you want to make this slavery.
But either way, we will get there.
Yeah.
But what we get to decide is whether we go through it like with following the flow or against the flow.